What are some of the benefits that you can think about of having a structure that's well thought through in America when you're setting up?
Yeah, there's several that come to mind. So step number one of the strategies is, what category are you in? If you're in a high risk category like baby exercise supplements, we already know the US is the biggest market in the world, which is fabulous. We also know US people like to blame people for their problems, and that comes in the form of a lawsuit. And whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. We're a registered agent here in Nevada, and a couple months ago, there was a lawsuit for a client selling clothing products on Shopify, and they're being sued by the state of California for price manipulation because they were offering, imagine this, they were offering different prices on their products. They had a Mother's Day sale. A couple months earlier was a different sales price. And there's some nuanced law in California that says that potentially that could fit into a bucket that is price manipulation. It's actually a class action lawsuit. So for that reason, you might say, I love the US, let me set up a separate legal entity to separate my business in Europe from my business in the US. Worst case, something happens in US, it doesn't affect my overall assets, they're all in one bucket. So now they're separated between two buckets. So that's consideration number one. Sometimes, based upon the marketplace like TikTok or Walmart, depending on which countries, there's different exceptions. So for TikTok Shop, it requires a W-9. So that requires a U.S. company. So by default, you're forming a U.S. company. And then if you're going to try to qualify for Shopify Payments, that requires a U.S. company. So there are situations like that. If you're going to do an exit, can you do an exit from a foreign company? Absolutely. Are there some buyers that would prefer to work with a U.S. company? Certainly. Are you working with U.S. retailers? Do you have a product that has pesticides in that can only be sold through a U.S. company? And then finally, there's this theme about buy from American companies, American brands, American manufacturers. Well, a lot of U.S. consumers are starting to do that. In many cases, of course, when they look at the reviews and they go down to the business name, you see a long Chinese name and a Chinese address. So this theme is starting to shift where some companies are like, I want that to show up as a U.S. company and the U.S. address. The address can make a difference. So these things might be something that could help in conversion or profits and sales. So all these factors come into play when you think about, do I need to add a U.S. company? And what are the benefits? What situation is going to be required? And of course, most of you are already selling through a foreign company. Then you're going to talk about, how do I get the profits from this U.S. company? Do I keep them in the U.S.? Do I bring them back to my foreign company? Then, of course, how does the ownership? Well, the ownership goes back to what we started talking about, which was before you form the company, LLC most common, could be taxed as C Corp, partnership, single member disregarded for non-residents. Who should be the manager and who should be the member? Well, when it's managed by a manager, you have flexibility in the operating agreement to determine maybe after the fact who the owner should be with proper planning. So all these factors come into play.